everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Tensions are escalating in the Middle East as the United States carried out further strikes against Iran, after Iran responded to earlier strikes with attacks on 5 Gulf nations. Iran claimed it had once again closed the Strait of Hormuz, but U.S. President Donald Trump rejected the claim, insisting that traffic is flowing. An intense heat wave has swept much of South Korea, with daytime highs forecast to reach between 30 and 37 degrees Celsius in most parts of the country today. Although temporary relief is expected to arrive tomorrow as the seasonal rain front moves in, forecasters warn that temperatures will likely climb again once the rain passes. Leveraged and inverse ETFs linked to SK hynix shares are set to debut on the New York stock market this week. This comes after the Korean chipmaker's Nasdaq debut last week, when its American depository receipts surged around 13% from the initial offering price, making it the largest ever U.S. listing by a foreign company. The United States and Iran have exchanged heavy attacks, sharply escalating tensions across the Gulf region. Despite the strikes, U.S. President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's claims that it had closed the Strait of Hormuz. Our Cho Young-eun starts us off.
The U.S. continued strikes against Iran over the weekend, which U.S. Central Command said in a social media post on Sunday, were meant to degrade Iran's ability to attack civilian mariners and commercial ships freely transiting the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM said President Trump ordered the strikes to hold Iranian forces accountable. According to the latest reports, around 140 Iranian targets were hit, including missile and drone launch sites, in an effort to weaken Iran's ability to threaten civilian shipping in the strategic waterway. Iran's armed forces have launched waves of missiles and drones targeting U.S. military bases across the Persian Gulf, including bases in Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman, in response to U.S. bombings against military facilities late last week. Iran's state-run Islamic Republic news agency reported that enemy projectiles had struck Hashim Island, a strategically important island in the Gulf that is home to a major Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps base. Later reports indicated that additional military facilities in Bandar Abbas, Qashm, and Hajabad had also been attacked. The sharp escalation in hostilities came as Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that it had shut the Strait of Hormuz. However, President Trump immediately rejected the claim and said traffic is flowing. U.S. Central Command has also insisted that the strait remains open, adding that U.S. forces are positioned and prepared to ensure freedom of navigation in the vital waterway. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
And now for more on the situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Dr. Kim Dae-chun, Professor of International Relations at the Graduate School of International Studies at Seogang University. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Good to be here.
So the United States has launched more strikes on Iran overnight. And after U.S. President Donald Trump said last week that the deal with Iran is now over, how do you think the U.S. intends to pursue this conflict from here?
Well, despite the latest round of U.S. strikes, I still don't think President Trump wants to return to a full-scale war with Iran. As we speak, there have been additional American strikes, but I see these attacks as an effort to maintain leverage in negotiations rather than to launch a new phase of the war. Sure, Trump once said that the deal was over, but I don't think that's what is actually happening. Behind the scenes, diplomacy is still moving forward, not directly, but indirectly through countries such as Pakistan, Qatar, and others. The biggest issue right now is the Strait of Hormuz, of course. The American position is that the entire strait should be open at once and remain open, free of any restrictions and free of any charges, any fees. Iran takes a very different view. Iran argues that the only shipping routes it designates are open And after a temporary period of 60 days, ships will have to pay service fees. Honestly, none of this is surprising. The MOU was never a final agreement. It was simply a framework for the next 60 days of negotiations. The fundamental problem is that both sides are interpreting the same document in very different ways. That's why I say that it's a less of memorandum of understanding, and it's more a memorandum of misunderstanding. But even so, neither side seems to willing to go back to the situation before the MOU. MOU was signed. Sure, they are fighting, but they are also negotiating at the same time.
Right, and in response to that, Iran has also attacked Gulf nations and has said it's once again closed the Strait of Hormuz. What do you think Iran's strategic objective is at this stage?
At this stage, I think the Strait of Hormuz is Iran's the most important source of leverage over the United States. In fact, it may be the only significant leverage Iran still has. One senior figure to Khamenei, Mustafa Khamenei, said that Hormuz is more valuable than 20 nuclear bombs. I think this statement speaks volume about how Iranian leaders view this issue. Iran understands that it cannot really compete with the United States in a conventional military sense. What it can do instead is to create costs. It can threaten global energy flows. It can disrupt shipping. It can put pressure on Gulf states that host American military facilities and bases. So what Iran is trying to do now is demonstrate credibility, credibility to impose costs. Tehran wants the United States to believe that when it threatens to disrupt Hormuz, it actually means it. And that, I think, is the reason why it shut down the Hormuz once again. And here the message is very simple. We may be weaker, but we still possess enough military and asymmetric capabilities to impose serious costs on you and other Gulf states. In other words, Iran is trying to preserve deterrence. It wants President Trump to understand that if Washington continues to pressure Iran, Tehran still has ways to retaliate. So this is not simply about a waterway. It is ultimately about bargaining power.
Right. So both sides are accusing each other of violating the deal, but neither side has officially called off these peace talks. How do you see negotiations between U.S. and Iran unfolding from here?
The way I see the situation is both countries are testing each other's nerves right now. They are trying to push the envelope and gain more leverage. But at the same time, as I said, neither side wants the conflict to escalate into a full-blown war. That, I think, is the most important point here. We all know there is a tremendous, really tremendous amount of anger and mistrust between Washington and Tehran, and that hasn't changed, and that is not going to change, in my personal opinion. But what has changed is that both sides now seem to understand the costs of retaliation and escalation. So what I expect is a pattern of negotiations, pressure, threats, occasional military strikes, and then a return to negotiations. They will continue arguing over how to interpret the MOU. They will accuse each other of violating the agreement. But from time to time, they may use maybe a limited force to improve their bargaining position. Then they'll come back to the negotiation table again. And I think this has already become a new normal. The new normal. The danger, however, is that history shows us many examples where limited and controlled confrontations eventually spiraled out of control. So while this situation may be manageable for now, it is inherently very, very dangerous. And I don't really see a clear exit unless one side eventually makes major concessions.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how the situation plays out. All right, Professor Kim, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
South Korea is enduring its most intense heat wave of the summer, with temperatures climbing as high as 37 degrees Celsius and tropical nights affecting much of the country. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
South Korea is sweltering under an intense heat wave, with scorching temperatures and tropical nights affecting much of the country on Monday. Daytime highs are forecast to reach between 30 and 37 degrees Celsius, while most regions are expected to see a heat index of around 33 degrees through Tuesday. Parts of Central Korea, Gyeongsang-buk-do Province, and Jeollabuk-do Province could feel as hot as 35 degrees. Seoul recorded its first tropical night of the year and its hottest temperature so far at 35 degrees Celsius, prompting authorities to expand the tropical night advisories. The Korean Meteorological Administration says the extreme heat is being driven by two powerful high-pressure systems over the Korean peninsula, combined with warm, humid southerly winds.
Heatwave advisories remain in effect across most of the country as a strong upper-level high-pressure system and hot, humid southerly winds fuel the extreme heat, with severe warnings issued for Pohang and Gyeongsang in Gyeongsang-buk-do Province.
Temporary relief is expected to arrive from Tuesday as the seasonal rain front moves in, bringing monsoon showers nationwide and temporarily easing the extreme heat. However, forecasters warn temperatures are likely to climb again once the rain passes, meaning the summer heat is far from over. Many people have sought relief from the heat at Seoul's Han River swimming pools, where crowds pack the facilities to cool off and escape the lingering summer temperatures.
It feels like the heat disappears all at once. It's cool and nice. Playing at night feels romantic.
With much of the summer still ahead, many will continue to seek out any relief from the heat, both during the day and night. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Following the U.S. listing of SK hynix American Depository Receipts last week, leveraged and inverse exchange traded funds, or ETFs, tied to the underlying asset are set to debut on the New York stock market early this week. According to major U.S. ETF issuers, multiple ETFs linked to the SK hynix ADR are scheduled for launch on Monday and Tuesday. U.S. ETF issuers have already been managing single stock leveraged and inverse ETFs, tracking major tech heavyweights listed in New York such as Nvidia, Tesla, and Alphabet. The SK hynix ADR made its debut on Wall Street on Friday, surging approximately 13% from its initial offering price to close at around $168.5. South Korea being the only country besides the U.S. to deploy both an Aegis destroyer and a submarine to RIMPAC drew a lot of attention from participating navies for their newest technologies and impressive warships. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
When the South Korean Navy first participated in the Rim of the Pacific in 1990, it came with only 2 warships. This year, marking the 19th edition of its participation, a lot has changed. The Navy has not only assumed the role of maritime component commander, becoming the first Navy from an Asian country to lead the force, it came with its most advanced naval assets along with more than 700 Navy and Marine Corps personnel. Among the assets, the largest Aegis destroyer, the 8,200-ton Jeongjo the Great, drew particular attention, as only 4, South Korea, the U.S., Japan, and Australia, were the participating nations that deployed Aegis destroyers. So far, during the exercise period, around 3,000 visitors have come for a tour, who reportedly admire the ship's outstanding capabilities and advanced technology.
Many foreign visitors said the ship was impressive and looked brand new. This exercise showed me how much the Republic of Korea Navy's global reputation has grown, and it made me proud of our Navy.
The frigate Daejeon welcomed the foreign naval crew for a tour.
Many foreign naval personnel who toured the ship praised its well-designed living quarters and said its equipment is laid out with the operator in mind.
The Dosan Anchangho was another Korean naval asset for foreign personnel to tour, especially after it sailed approximately 14,000 kilometers across the Pacific Ocean. In fact, only 4 nations, South Korea, the U.S., Canada, and Peru, deployed submarines this year for RIMPAC, And according to the commander of the submarine, Peruvian naval personnel were impressed by the scale of the 3,000-ton submarine and its advanced capabilities.
Once seen as a small navy that only sent a couple of frigates to RIMPAC in the past, the ROC Navy has now emerged as a major maritime force, showcasing its advanced capabilities and rising global presence. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Honolulu.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the death toll from the country's devastating twin earthquakes has now climbed to 4,490, according to updated figures released by the country's government. The official number of injured remains at 16,740, while 17,907 people have been left homeless. Officials reported that 856 buildings were damaged, and 1,222 aftershocks have been recorded since the main quake struck on June 24th. The United Nations has estimated that around 50,000 people remain missing beneath the rubble as search and rescue operations continue. In sports, South Korea's Ryu Hae-ran has captured her second straight LPGA major title, winning the Amundi Evian Championship in France after a dramatic playoff victory on Sunday. The world number 7 defeated Canada's Brooke Henderson on the first playoff hole after the pair finished tied at a 19 under par 265. Yu had led by 5 shots during the final round before being forced into extra holes, where she sealed the win with a birdie. It marks her 5th LPGA Tour title overall and comes just 2 weeks after her breakthrough major victory at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. She is now the first South Korean golfer since Park In-bi in 2013 to win back-to-back LPGA major championships. Young farmers in Korea are using AI-generated data to grow tomatoes in a smarter and a more sustainable way. The system is helping cut costs and challenges old assumptions about what can be grown in South Korea's warmer regions. Our Kim So-young explains more.
Kimjae, Jeollabuk-do province is known for its golden sunsets. It is also home to a tomato farm run by Kim Gi-hyun, a young farmer who moved to the countryside 5 years ago. But this is not a conventional greenhouse farm. Kim's farm is managed with the help of an AI program that uses sunlight and weather data to guide the growing process. The program is called Grow Mind and was developed by Kim and a group of fellow young farmers. The system predicts farm conditions hour by hour, including the sun's angle and position, seasonal solar radiation, humidity, and cloud cover. The data is then used to adjust the greenhouse environment. The results have been significant. Heating costs have dropped by around 30%, while yields have increased by roughly 14 to 20%.
We believe that tomatoes could not be grown during the hottest months in the southern area, but with the help of AI, I was able to make it work.
Kim believes farming should be driven by data. Last year, his program was awarded at an AI competition hosted by the Rural Development Administration.
By quickly processing large amounts of data collected, AI can help optimize greenhouse management.
The Rural Development Administration says it plans to expand the technology to more crops in the years ahead. Kim So-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Republican U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham died Saturday night after suffering a ruptured aorta. He was 71. According to preliminary findings from the medical examiner's office, the rupture was linked to hardened arteries, with officials awaiting toxicology results to confirm an official cause of death. Just hours before his death, Senator Graham had returned from a trip to Ukraine, where he met with President Vladimir Zelensky to discuss air defense needs. Ukrainian and Israeli leaders both expressed condolences, praising Graham's decades-long advocacy for their nations. President Trump called Graham a, quote, hard-working patriot and ordered flags lowered in his honor. Graham had once been a vocal critic of Trump before later becoming a loyal supporter. He spent much of his career shaping foreign policy from the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he oversaw more than 200 federal judicial confirmations. Typhoon Bavi made landfall in eastern China this weekend as the strongest storm to hit mainland China this year. The storm struck the coast of Zhejiang province on Saturday night before weakening to a tropical storm as it moved inland. Chinese authorities had evacuated more than 2.8 million people, and thousands of flights and train services were canceled. Despite widespread property damage, no deaths or injuries have been reported. Before hitting mainland China, the storm battered Taiwan, which reported 134 injuries and hundreds of canceled flights. Meteorologists warn the storm system retains enough strength to generate dangerous rainfall hundreds of kilometers inland as it moves toward China's northeastern provinces this week. A fire tore through a Bangkok pub early on Monday, killing at least 27 people in one of Thailand's deadliest nightlife disasters in recent years. Thailand's prime minister confirmed the death toll after visiting the scene. Survivors reported that there were no emergency exits near the rear bathroom area where many fled. Another 63 people remain hospitalized with injuries. Witnesses described a sudden blackout followed by thick smoke and a powerful explosion that ignited the venue's stage area. Authorities are investigating the cause as forensic teams work to identify the victims. In Spain, one of the country's deadliest wildfires has killed at least 12 people in the southeastern region of Almeria. The fire has scorched more than 60 square kilometers of forest and farmland since starting on Thursday, amid Western Europe's third heat wave this summer. Most victims were foreign nationals who authorities say died after failing to reach safety in time, though family members of one victim dispute claims that adequate warnings were given. Spanish officials arrested 2 people for violating evacuation orders as crews evacuated nearly 1,500 residents from surrounding communities.
As the monsoon briefly takes a break, extreme heat has been taking over across Korea. Seoul experienced its second consecutive tropical night as overnight temperatures stayed over 25 degrees Celsius. And today feels like temperatures will climb to around 35 degrees in the capital region. In fact, most regions are under heat wave alerts and tropical night advisories. So please take well care. Meanwhile, a few showers are possible this afternoon and evening in central Korea and Jeollabuk-do province, bringing 5 to 40 millimeters of passing showers. Then 5 to 20 millimeters of rain is expected for southwestern regions as well as Jeju Island. And this afternoon, Seoul will be soaring to 33 degrees Celsius. Daegu topping out at 36 degrees, then Gyeongju will be sizzling hot at 37 degrees under strong UV rays. The monsoon rain will return nationwide tomorrow, and as the rain moves in, the intense heat will ease and things will become a lot more comfortable.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.